Hello, everybody. This is Coffee Time. I'm your host, Byron. This is episode number 70. Yeah, 71, I believe. I can't remember. I've done so many already. It's hard to remember. But alongside me is former major leaguer Rich Thompson, former Ray, I might add, as well, for a little bit. How are you doing tonight?
Good, mate. You got the other Rich Thompson. I'm the one from the Angels and the A's. The Rich Thompson from the Rays was the outfielder. Yeah.
See? 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 I should have known that. Good catch. Thank you. Anywho, so how are you doing today? Are you enjoying yourself? Taking good care of yourself over there?
Mate, it's good. It's crazy here right now. Um, I'm the now head JUCO college coach here in Hot Springs, Arkansas at National Park College. So we just got our guys back on campus, and with that, we have 50-some guys that are coming from all over the U.S. And that's always an interesting proposition when you're in our times we are.
Yeah, it's crazy. I know. So what have you been doing to like stay safe? Have you been like I know you guys are you guys like in lockdown like some places like here it's some places are locked down. What about you?
Mate, we haven't been too bad. Arkansas has been a little bit, I guess, I wouldn't say lax, but it's definitely not quite as, I'm from Australia. I grew up in Australia. Mum and dad were locked down for, the better part of a year. So
Mhm.
it's definitely different here. I mean, I've got my mask always on me. So it is, that's kind of the best we can do right now.
So let's start off with this. Actually, I want to start off with. So you were in the 2004 Athens Olympics. You won silver with Team Australia. What was that experience like in playing for your country?
I was a young kid, man. I was 20 years old at the time, and I'd been in Pro Bowl a couple of years at the time, and I pitched well in Pro Bowl at the beginning, and was lucky enough that they took a chance on me. I was young and really unproven, especially at that level. Um, and when you're 20 years old and being able to potentially absorb everything that's going on, is probably a bit above you, maybe a bit beyond your years potentially. But that also may have been a good thing, is that I was not 100% aware of maybe I guess, world scale that I was actually on. I'd always watched the Olympics as a child, and Australia obviously is massive at the Olympics. We love it, and it's the pinnacle of sport for an Australian to go to the Olympics.
Mm-hmm.
Baseball is not quite the same. Baseball, the pinnacle is the major leagues, but
Right.
um, it's definitely a massive. It was crazy. We knocked off Matsuzaka 1-0 to go to the gold medal game, and I think their payroll is around, I don't know, $50 million, and I think ours was $1 million, and that was one guy. So it was it was David versus Goliath situation, and baseball's a wonderful game in that you have a guy that goes out there and shuts the team out. You've only got to get one.
Now you mentioned one former major leaguer that was in it, Dice K.
Mhm.
Who else did you face off that was in the majors at that time? Who else did you face? Do you remember?
Um, the catcher was Abe for Japan, and the biggest, I think, the biggest Goliath of them all, right at that period of time, 2004, Cuba was just next
Stat.
level. Yeah,
Yeah.
they were just next level, and they'd retained everybody. Now they um, don't always retain everybody, um, but there was guys that on that Cuban team that were just grown men and had been playing in the Cuban League for so long and were just, household names worldwide, especially in international baseball.
Mm.
On our club, we had David Nilsson, former, actually the first All-Star ever in the major leagues in Australian. Graham Lloyd, big lefty, would pitch for the Yankees, with multiple World Series. So we had some guys that had been at the highest level, and then I want to say there was probably about 10 Australian guys. I might be slightly exaggerating, but about 10 Australian guys ended up playing in the big leagues. Like from that.
Were you before or after Grant Balfour? Was he on that team, or was he in?
Grant was in the big leagues at the time, or he was up and down and was unable to go. I was after him. He is 7 years older than I. One of the cool things that Grant and I share is that we had 3 Australians at one time with the Oakland Athletics. It was for a short time. I want to say it was for like 3 days. At the time, it was me, Luke Hughes, who played for the Twins and A's.
I know.
So I was part of the trio of Australians that were on an active major league roster at one point in time, and I don't know if that'll ever happen again.
No,
that was different, I suppose.
Now, is the game over since you played over in Australia before you came over here? Is it the same rules as over here, or do you guys have different set of rules inning wise? What is it? What's it like over there?
It's exactly the same. We play America's game, I suppose, right? But our younger kids definitely don't play as many games, and I think that's one thing that young Aussie kids come over and they're maybe undersized and undergamed. Is probably the biggest thing. Is that the amount of games that youth play here is not touchable at our scale. We have a different way of we play high school and college here. We don't have that. Everything's club and
right,
and state-run organizations. So it's definitely a different scape and a different way to get to the end goal of coming to the US and either playing college baseball or going professionally. But we do have such a great development group of old baseball heads that love the game and just want to get back to the game. And I think that's a credit to the way that the Aussie guys are staying in the game and being able to pass on the past generations of wealth of knowledge.
Now, we just had this past Olympics with it being in Japan. Obviously, that's the main sport over there is Japan. So they were allowed to bring that back in the Olympics after, I think it was 8 or 10 year hiatus, or however long it was. Do you think it depends on the country how they'll do the Olympics? Will they bring back baseball and softball? Do you think it depends on where the games are at, what country it's at? Because if it's like some country that don't play baseball, do you think it won't come back to that Olympics? It'll come back to a city. Like the next games, I believe, is in France. And I know France plays baseball, so I'm pretty sure it'll probably be there. Do you think it'll be like that, depending on what city they're at?
The Olympics definitely went through a funny period in which, they took out Greco-Roman wrestling. Like, how are you taking out one of the original Olympic sports?
Yeah.
And I think it was really a push to say, okay, listen, we want the best athletes to come to the Olympics. Sure. How could you not have baseball in Tokyo when you have the infrastructure? And there's, that is the national sport in Japan, really, right? So it was almost a no-brainer. How do you not bring baseball back for that Olympics? I know we were really disappointed because for Australian baseball, that was the pinnacle together, right? The World Cup was great. but nothing's the Olympics. The Olympics is special.
Yeah.
And I know they worked so tirelessly and to get it back in the Olympics because it was, it was baseball and softball together, and they were really, they were a package deal.
Yeah.
So it was when it went to Japan, it was like, man, you have the Tokyo Dome, you have all the things that make it almost turnkey to have baseball in it. I do hope they continue to have it. I mean, but infrastructure costs money, and if it's not viable, I could see them potentially not having every single sport that we would love to happen in the Olympics. I mean, that's and I'm hoping that maybe the youth movement and the younger population would support baseball enough that if, I mean, they're bringing in BMX, and the ones that maybe more push towards the younger generations following.
Yeah.
That, hopefully they're smart enough to pick baseball too.
So last question about the Olympics before we move on to your career. I got to ask you then, I know Japan, since it is their sport, they allowed professionals from their professional league to take time. They paused their season to play.
Yeah.
Why can't the majors do that? Why don't the players, or why doesn't MLB let their players play for their home country?
Financial reasons, I'm sure. The potential risk of injury. I think there's many facets to why, and it lands bank smack in the middle of the season. I mean, that doesn't help.
That's true.
And especially when potentially, how many guys you're going to lose? Maybe, what if 40 dudes played in it? Right. Shut down 800 players for 40 dudes, and it's probably unrealistic. It also gives those elite amateur players or AAA players or AA guys that they let minor league guys go.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the ability to show I can perform on a world stage or a higher stage or something that gives you, hey man, I haven't seen that guy yet in person, but now I can watch him on TV and go, hang on, this guy might be worth a look, or all 30 organizations now get to watch one guy and go, hang on a minute, this guy deserves a chance, or this guy surprises us. Like, let's take a chance on that kid, and hopefully he now gets the opportunity to play either affiliated ball if he's not already in it, or get a chance at the major league level.
So the same day after you sign your second contract with the Angels in 2007, you make your debut the same day against the Texas Rangers. What was that experience like? Because not many people get to do that. Sign the same day they make their debut. Not many can say that. You're one that can say that. So what was that like?
It was a surreal situation because I don't know. Sometimes I'm just going through, like, I'm so focused on what I'm doing. I guess I wasn't even externally looking that maybe I'd potentially get called up September 1st.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't even really crossing my mind because I'd gone from A ball to AAA that year. I'd really sort of hit every stop on the way in 1 year, and I'd been with the Angels since 2002. Through the minor league system, I signed as a 17-year-old kid, and came over. Brian Harper, a longtime catcher with the Twins, was my AAA manager, and calls me in the office and tells me that, hey man, congratulations, you're going to the big leagues. And he was actually my first ever manager in pro ball, so it was kind of nice that we we kind of did this. We'd known each other since I'd basically come to the US.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I'm calling back home. Back home's kind of midday, I guess. Just, hey, I just got called up. Like this is I don't really know how to process this yet. But hey, you've got a flight at 6 a.m. in the morning. So I'm up calling people till whoever knows how long. I get, and the adrenaline's going crazy. I bet I got 30 minutes of sleep.
Mm-hmm.
We're playing a day game in Anaheim, and I get in about, I don't know, 30 minutes before game time, it feels like.
Mm-hmm.
Just enough time to go, hey, what's up, guys? Like, I've played with a bunch of you guys throughout the minor leagues, and Howie Kendrick was my first ever roommate in pro ball. So, I knew a lot of guys in the room. And it comes, I think, the 8th inning, I think it is. And, hey, get Chopper going is my nickname. We'll just get this guy going. And you've slept 30 minutes. And you're running on just pure adrenaline, and it's like, geez, let's get after it, throw the ball at the plate. I think I punched out the first 2 guys, and then battle with Kinsley, hit a double, and then I got the next guy out, ground out to second base. But to be able to, and I've talked about this with guys after, I guess, the fact, right? Once you get a little older and you kind of look back and you go, how did you respond to the situation when you got called up? Were you, did you even realize what was happening? It's kind of, and that was me. I was an Aussie kid that dreamed of playing the big leagues, but it seems like a long way away from a 5-year-old kid in Australia.
Yeah. So unfortunately, you get sent down because I guess Scott Shields came back from the disabled list, and later that year in 08. But then you end up getting an injury in 08, and you end up rehabbing, and you while finishing the season with the Bees. I think they're AAA affiliate, right?
Yeah.
What did you have? What kind of injury did you have? Was it Tommy John? And how long did it take for you to rehab to come back? Did it take a whole year?
It was a weird injury. I was having some numbness in my fingers, and they kind of traced it back to some just a little shoulder impingement that was just kind of causing some pinching of the nerves, and it probably took about 3 months to kind of really get back to where it needed to be. It was a crazy situation. Shields was basically not ready, and I knew that I made opening day. That next year I made opening day, and kind of knew that Shields was probably a week to 10 days away. So I knew I had a limited time unless I came out and just really, did what I needed to do. I had a good spring, and you're always the young kid, you're last man in, right? And then they're paying guys a lot more money to set up jobs and to close the jobs than you are. So, but it's funny, you get your first taste, you play a month in the big leagues, you get opening day, and man, I'm rolling. Maybe I've turned the corner. I've been in pro ball for 5.5, 6 years, or whatever it is at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But this is my chance to really roll, and then you have this little setback, and it's like, man, the momentum was rolling for me.
Now, did you know you could come back from whatever you had, or did you think, oh man, my time in the majors is up, that I might never get a chance to come back?
No, I think I'm an optimist, I guess, in the fact that I was like, this is just a little setback. I'm gonna go down to Arizona, do my rehab, and I'll be back in a week. By the time 2 months rolls around, you're like, yeah, I need you to let me out of here. I'm good. Just let me out of here. I don't care how bad it hurts. We're just getting out of here. So just let me get back to doing what I do. So I knew it wasn't wasn't career ending. I knew it was just kind of something that was just kind of, all right, we have soreness. We pitch with soreness. We pitch with injury. How bad is the injury?
So on September 10th of 2010, you pick up your first major league win that went into extra innings. Do you remember who that team was and how well you performed to get that win?
You know, being a reliever, I think wins is a funny one as a reliever.
It is.
It really is, because you could blow the save and still get the win, and so it's one of those ones that's like, either that or you've been in the game for a minute, and sure, like if you come in, you shut them down, and your team goes ahead, and it's awesome. And I do remember it, but it's one of those ones that took a while too. Like it wasn't, and I guess it wasn't a priority. I was looking. Hopefully, I'd get a save or something like that. That you're always looking for holds or looking for as a reliever, you just don't want a loss, right?
Yeah, better than a loss. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, especially when you're on the road, you don't want the loss.
No. Do you remember? Do you remember who you?
No, who was it?
Did you strike out anybody? It was the Mariners, Seattle Mariners.
Against the Mariners.
Yep, it was against the Mariners.
Did I get Ichiro out that day?
Probably, I'd say you did.
Yeah.
I don't have the stats in front of me, but I'm sure you did. Ichiro is hard to get out, but if anybody,
he was a tough out.
He was a tough out for sure. So the year later, you make your Australian Baseball League for the Sydney Blue Sox. Yep. So you go back to your home country and pitch. What was that experience like pitching for your professional league over there?
So that year was the first year of the ABL coming back. So in 2001, we lost the Australian Baseball League, partly due to September 11th, because there was no imports coming anymore. And the league folded, and it was one of those things that was so. I grew up watching the old ABL, and it's a massive. It was massive for me as a kid to go out and be able to watch somebody that was a grown man. It was a professional league. It was the professional league for the country,
right?
So I, with being basically one of the only major league guys at the time, probably able to do it, I wanted to really push the fact that, all right, we've got to build. This league has to come back, and maybe even if a few of us guys that are either in the big leagues or on the cusp of the big leagues can come back and make some headlines. Hey, we've got this guy coming, and hopefully we can get this league started in a positive fashion from day one. And I loved it. You get to play with your friends. You get to play with your childhood friends. Guys
right.
you've known.
People you grew up with.
Yeah, guys you've known for 15, 20 years, playing with and playing against, and that's always such a great thing for me, and the Australian camaraderie, and like some of the funnest times that I've had have been on Australian teams. You have common interests. You have, you have inside jokes that are probably just Australian guys would get. Just the little things that, just the slang and all the things that you can use that if you would say that on a professional baseball team over here, they're like, what planet are you from, man?
Yeah, very true. So then April 2012, unfortunately, you get designated for assignment by the Angels, but then you get picked up 6 days later by the Oakland Athletics. Did you know you were going to be cut? Did they tell you? Who told you were going to ultimately be cut?
It was a funny one. We just changed general managers the season before. Sorry, that spring training, I suppose, was his first spring training. and I'd been in the organization for 11 years, or 10 or 11 years. So, you know, I had. Hang on one sec.
You're good.
Sorry, apparently my office has a timer.
No worries. No worries.
So we fly to New York, and I had history with, I've known everybody for 10 years, right? Everyone, you work with people for 10 years, you know them inside out, you know their good days and their bad days, you know that you have so much time invested in somebody that maybe they gave up 4 runs against Minnesota, and maybe you let them get another day.
Yeah.
Right? But we didn't have that, and that's okay. We flew to New York, and I'd known those, I'd been on the team for 6 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd been there a good minute. So that was difficult, and, you have relationships with everybody that you've had for a very long time. But the previous few years, I'd pitched pretty well. The previous year I had a 3.0 on the nose with, I don't know, almost 60 innings, probably something like that. So I had a good feeling that I wouldn't make it through waivers. And I said, thanks very much. And I understand this is business, right? I'm kind of pushing up to where I'm going to be hitting arbitration too if I stay here, and all the things that come with that. And I understand, I really do understand. And I know that you're trying to sneak me through right now too. Rosters have just been set, and there's not always a job in that first week to 10 days. And coming out of spring training, maybe everyone likes that team. They're like, oh, we got some good guys here. We just haven't figured out. We haven't figured out we're not very good yet.
Yeah.
So the good thing is that the A's picked me up, and it was 100% about them picking up depth.
Yeah.
And I lasted a week in Oakland, and they designated me again. So, once you slide through the portal twice, then it's kind of, that there's less a chance that you'll end up getting picked up again.
At least you got to stay with them, though. They outrighted you to AAA. So
yeah, 100%. I love the A's, and it was 100% a move where I hope that they said, well, we don't have to face this guy anymore if we take him. and then I was somewhat a veteran backup plan, if, with some experience, and I was cheap at the time, basically just above minimum. And, if you've got a guy with parts of 6 years that, you can throw into the game and go, this guy's not a fresh fish. He's not a first timer that we're just testing the waters out. He's not a young prospect. He's been around a little bit. He's probably a half decent clubhouse guy and not looking to ruffle too many feathers. And they had a young club at the time too, and I think Balf was probably the oldest guy in the bullpen at the time, and was the closer, and it really was, they 100% needed me for depth.
Now, did you know that April 23rd of that year you were with them before you got designated for assignment? Did you know that was going to be your final appearance in the majors, or did you think you were going to get called up one more time that year?
I 100% thought I was at a good shot at getting called up. It was a weird situation. I was 100% hurt with the Angels.
Mm-hmm.
And my fastball had dipped a little bit, enough to, I wasn't mid nines anymore. I was, low 90s. Had to be a lot more, had to pitch a little bit more, I guess. If you at the time, if you were throwing mid to uppers, it makes the game a little bit easier. You throw a little bit more beyond the upper echelon of hitting speed. But yeah, I don't think. I mean, I think it's a very rare thing that that it's your last game. Fast forward 12, well, I guess the end of the season. And I was 28, right?
Yeah.
I still got 6
Plenty
years.
of time. Yeah,
right?
plenty of time left. Yeah.
In the off season, I'm hanging on I had battled back injuries like the whole year. I kept pitching. Turns out I needed a. Turns out, like, I get to spring training the next year with Blue Jays. I need a back fusion. Pitch against the Yankees one day in spring training. I've never pitched again. So, you go in thinking, well, I've been in the big leagues the previous 6 years. And it's not over. I'm going back. Even when after 2 back surgeries, I'm like, I'm still okay. Like, I will get there. Clock keeps ticking, and you're still in pain to this day. After 2 back fusions, you go, well, yeah, maybe it's not happening anymore.
Yeah. So unfortunately, yeah, like you said, that's probably what ended up ending your career. And I know you didn't want to end it, but hey, if a player is hurt and if you're hurt and you can't do it again, I mean, it sucks. But for those who don't know, as even I don't know, what is the 2 back surgeries you had? What do they do to help, try and fix it? And what's the rehab for it?
It's a long one. It's funny because you blow your elbow out and you get TJ, right?
Yeah.
12 months.
Yeah.
You have a labrum, 9 to 12 months, right?
Yeah.
You'll be back. I got hurt with, that next day I go see the doctor. And he says, you need a fusion. If you get a fusion, here is your odds about ever playing again. It's 0. And so basically my disc was way out of line, and just pitching. You throw a lot of innings and your body breaks down somewhere. That was the weakest link.
Yeah.
So the first one, they came through the front. They throw 4 screws in there. They take all the disc out. They throw everything in, kind of short back up. Hopefully the bone grows in, and you basically just have one less moving vertebrae.
Yeah.
Fast forward 12 months, I'm still in complete agony. Nothing's helped. They come in through the back and then throw 4 more screws in, some rebar, and hey, this thing's not going to move again.
Yeah.
The problem is that it just never healed.
Never healed.
Yeah, and it was, I went to a doctor in California following that, is, like, I think we can do it. There's a new technology out there. I think you'll be able to play again. You're still in good shape. We can get you back. And unfortunately, my body just didn't respond. It just didn't respond the way it needed to respond. And, it was just, the technology may not quite have been there yet. I think there's really only been a handful of guys that have ever got a fusion that have ever even come back to pitch a game. And if they do, they don't pitch very many before they're no longer in the game.
Right.
And it's just the rebound. The times where you sit down or stand and you stand on your feet all day or whatever, it feels like that all the time.
Yeah.
So that's unfortunately, as a reliever, you need to be ready to go every day, right? So if you can't go every day, there's not a lot of help for you on that side.
Now, you spent 5 years in the big leagues. You've seen a lot of players in your time
Yeah.
pitching. Out of the players, you'd say, if you can remember, uh, who hit you the most and who hit you the least? Do you remember any of the names?
I probably gave up one of Mike Piazza's last home runs.
There you go.
I don't know how much longer he played after 2007. I definitely gave up Mike Piazza, one of Mike Piazza's
Right.
last ones. I was lucky enough to pitch against a lot of guys that Hall of Famers.
Right.
And play with Hall of Famers also.
You did, yeah.
My college guys ask me now, and I have a video of me striking out Ortiz. And if they're ever talking trash or whatever, it's like, here's the video, man. Just, and I was lucky enough to get out A-Rod. I was lucky enough to get out Manny Ramirez, Sammy Sosa.
Yeah.
My toughest opponent, and I'm sure Ian probably never remembers me, but I sure remember all the at bats I had to throw against Ian Kinsler. And I don't know if it was just he was just a tough out. And I don't know if it was just that he was my first hit ever given up in the big leagues too. But every single at bat we faced each other, it would just felt like a grueling, man, how do I get this dude out? And I ended up striking him out in a pretty big situation. Like one of the biggest, kind of a big moment in a game. We were, I think, down by 1. It was like, came in, got us out of the inning, and struck him out on a call that he thinks is probably not a strike, but I'm the pitcher. I know it's a strike, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, he was tough out, really bloody tough out.
Now, obviously, you played for a great manager and Mike Scioscia, a catcher in his own right, great manager, won many games. Unfortunately, he didn't. He didn't. After a few years passed, he ended up getting fired, unfortunately, because they weren't winning. Yeah. But you played under him. What was he like as a manager, and how much of a leader was he?
He's a great manager, and it's really just when you have somebody that has so much knowledge and experience in the game. And when I first signed in 2002, that was the year he won the World Series.
That's right. Yeah.
So, I was a kid in Australia. I'd signed and played rookie ball 1 year, and then they go on to win the World Series.
Yep.
And
that was the year.
Yeah. It's like, this is kind of special. I watched this guy on TV since I was, the first day of professional baseball. That's our manager. That's the Angels manager. He's never not going to be the Angels manager.
Uh-huh.
Right. And I love Scioscia and that whole staff. Like, when you come up in an organization for so many years, it's not just the pinnacle of it's the pinnacle of sport for you, and you go, man, that's where I need to be. I need to be under that guy.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And we really, the funny part is we really hadn't had, when I was a minor leaguer, I think I went once to just be a helper in the bullpen, the guys hey, minor league guys, come over for a day and help just in case we get shelled, we need a guy to come in and fix an inning.
Yeah.
I'd been over maybe once. And it was, nothing but welcoming and trying to, hey man, you can do this. Your stuff is there. We want you, and we know you can do this.
Right.
So, that was awesome. And obviously the last day with the Angels, he's the one telling me that, hey man, Sorry.
Yeah, unfortunately, I had to tell you. Yeah.
Yeah.
What
Not for a
about
long time. But
like you said, you also had a good you also had a good coaching staff, and honestly, he was. I mean, uh, you had a good pitching coach and Mike Butcher all them years.
yeah.
How much of the game? How much of the game in the pitching? You were young at the time. How much did he have in your growing experience pitching for the Angels?
So Butch was my rover before he got the big league job. You know, Buddy Black got the Padres job, right?
Yeah, got my Padres at the time. Yeah,
Yeah, and then Joe Madden left to go, to Tampa. I guess he went straight to Tampa.
Tampa. Yeah, he did.
But he just kept pumping out big league managers from his staff. Like if you look back, and Butch was my pitching coach and all the way through, like as the rover. So we had a relationship prior. But when I got to the big leagues, I was not very good at getting ahead of hitters. Whether that was nerves, whether that was whatever it was, I'd end up getting behind and then having to groove something.
Yeah.
And if it's a straight fastball, big leaguers can hit that, no matter how hard you throw it.
Right.
So I end up getting taught a cutter in 2009. I think we practiced this in September of 2009.
Mm-hmm. And
then I take it into the game. Like, I don't know, 2 weeks later, I've never thrown a cutter in my life. I don't even know, it was too late. It was probably like 2 days later, I'm bringing this cutter into the big league. And had to learn to pitch in the big leagues, which is crazy to think that you get all the way through AAA, get to the big leagues and go, man, I don't know how to pitch.
Yeah.
I'm a thrower.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he taught me this cutter that gave me the ability to get back an account without it being straight, and get off a barrel. And it kind of bought me the ability to get back an account. I didn't have to throw my curveball if they were sitting dead red. And it gave me the ability to. I wasn't a very good field pitcher, right? I was here, let it rip, man. I'm going to throw everything as hard as I can throw it.
Mm-hmm.
If I don't throw it as hard as I'm going to throw it, I'm going to be mad at myself for leaving some effort on the table. So, but the cutter is such a great pitch in that you can throw it as hard as you want, or as hard as you can, and get off a barrel. Like I couldn't throw a sinker. I wasn't a great sinker guy. I was pretty, rude finger dominant is what I kind of tell kids these days. If you're kind of rude finger dominant and you cut the ball a lot, I would, sinkers maybe not your pitch. Like
Right.
it's difficult if you are not really index finger dominant to really do that. So, or sometimes even learn to do that. But it was something that I didn't have to feel, and I could just let it rip, and I could throw it just with almost more command than potentially my fastball.
So for those, I know how it was because I've been watching baseball all my life, so I already know. But for those at home that don't know your career, you pitched in the AL West. Now, before the Astros got there and got good, you had the Mariners, you had the A's, and
The Rangers, yep.
the Angels, all that in your division.
Yep.
How tough was it being in that division and having to go against top of the line guys? Because they always, at least the Rangers and the A's, pretty much made the playoffs every year, and so did you when you were with the Angels.
Mm-hmm.
How tough was that division?
The division was really difficult. And part of what makes that division so difficult is the travel. I want to say that we did the most miles of any team one year.
Yeah.
we ended up, when interleague was a thing, it was we played the NL East one year. You played a division.
Yeah.
And we had the NL East one year, so we're going back and forth across the country all the time.
Yeah, that's right.
But though, when I was there, lucky enough, it was we were making the playoffs every year.
Yeah, I remember that.
It was us and the Rangers.
Yep.
Battling it out till September 30th. Like every single year.
Mm-hmm.
That was the teams of the Beltrays and the Michael Youngs and and they were just stacked, top to bottom. They were just really, really good. And pitching was good too. Like they had Cliff Lee and like these guys that were dudes that could take the ball and go out and win you a game if you needed it.
Yeah.
And we had the exact same thing. Like we had Vladimir Guerrero. We had Torrey Hunter. We had Jared Weaver that you could give that dude the ball and he was never going to give up.
Yep.
Like he was just going to battle until he won.
He's another one I'm trying to get on here too. He's another one.
And, like he's
good guy.
100%. And it's like, that whole division was stacked.
Yeah.
And the Mariners clubs were good at the time. The A's clubs were good at the time. But those series against the Rangers were
brutal.
We just knocked down, drag out like battles.
Yeah.
And every game seemed to matter because it was always that you guys were, battling to try and get to 92 wins. I think like if you could get to 92 wins, you would kind of like that was almost a safe spot. You win 92, you close. I think every other year it'd be between 95 and whatever, but depending on how if Seattle won 116 games in a year or whatever they did
right, yeah.
But it was a non-stop drag out always, it seemed.
Now, I can't remember though at the time. I know he signed a 10-year contract with the Angels. Did you get to play with, or were you with the Athletics at the time? Did you get to play with Albert Pujols?
Albert was there the year I got designated. So I got, I don't know, 8 weeks with Albert. So, and that was a crazy time. The Angels did that big TV deal. And it was kind of a funny, they knew that David was going to get done, right?
Yeah, they did.
But the 2 days prior, they signed CJ Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
They signed Josh Hamilton.
Yep.
And then they signed Albert.
Yep.
For about $500 million. And you're like, oh, next day, $10 million, $1 billion TV deal? Yeah. Okay. It all makes sense now. Right. And a couple of those contracts didn't quite work out, I'm sure, the way they wanted them to. But
unfortunately,
super great players. I'm sure I would have spent that much money on Albert too, and Josh Hamilton because, well, Josh Hamilton was on the Rangers at the time, beating us up every week.
Yes, he was. Yes, he was.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, because the Pujols unfortunately didn't pan out. Playoff results, unfortunately, that never panned out. And about Hamilton, that career went downhill, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Olsen, he was good with the Rangers, but just I don't know what it was. He just couldn't do well for you guys. I don't know.
He had decent years. It's different. You come up with the team, you're comfortable. And it's just so different. Anywhere you go, like it is difficult to be comfortable and then be comfortable in a uniform and then have to change. Like I think change is difficult. You're comfortable in a ballpark. You're comfortable in your own house. You're comfortable in all these things that when it changes, no matter who you are.
Yeah.
No matter, and the Angels can sometimes be a West Coast Yankees sort of media atmosphere potentially. They're not quite as much as the Dodgers or or that, but it's you're under the spotlight.
Yeah.
That's why New York is so difficult, right?
Yeah.
Like you're under the thumb all the time.
So, two-part question.
Okay.
You, how good were you? How well did you pitch in the playoffs? And two, the second part is, did you have any moments where you guys were close to making the playoffs that you thought you should have made the playoffs?
Unfortunately, I was like that long reliever guy. So I was probably the 26th or 27th man on the playoff roster a couple of times.
Mm-hmm.
Because that fourth, fifth starter would end up pushing me out of my job, I guess is really what it would be, right? My biggest one I remember is 2009. And the boys are in the ALCS. A-Rod hits the home run.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
To beat us. And, you're invested in the fact that you kind of get a big check if we go to the World Series. And whatever, all the stuff that comes with that, you're invested. Hey, man, if we go to the World Series, maybe I get to play.
Yeah.
Maybe some crazy thing happens and I get to play. And then maybe I'll come home with a World Series ring too. That wouldn't be too awful too either, right?
Right.
It was always down to the wire. It was every once in a while you'd clinch in early September or mid-September and you had 2 weeks to prepare. That's not very common. It really is. It's not that you were ever blowing that division out. Like some of those years where a team just runs away with it and especially now with the wild card, right?
Yeah.
You're the second wild card that there was a wild card, but now there's 2 wild cards. So I think once you clinch the division and you clinch that wild card, it's like, oh, whew, but then you still got to play the wild card game too. So it's a different landscape now than it was even 10 years ago.
Now, your time with your time with the Athletics, did you get to or was this after you left? Did you get to play with Houston Street?
Where was Houston? Houston might have been in San Diego. What was his last year with the A's? I can't remember he was there.
I can't remember either. I think it was with your. Hold on, let me look that up. I think
first year with the Padres might have been 2012.
Let's see. Let's look you up here.
And he may have been hurt with the A's.
He may have been, yeah. Because I know he was closer for you guys for a while there, but I don't remember.
He was closer for a long time. And Houston and I came up together. Like he was a pretty quick to the big leagues kind of guy, but I think I was in Double-A when Houston came to Midland. And it's kind of crazy to think.
Yep, you're right. He was with the Padres in 2012, and he was with the Rockies in 09 and 11. He was with the Athletics in 05 and 08.
Yeah, he was a bit before time. He was pitching against me when I was with the Angels.
Yeah.
So, but he came up with the A's, and the Angels and the A's always, their affiliates always just seemed to line up, and we always just played the A's, right? And that was when the A's farm system was, man, it was nasty. Like it was just full of guys that you wouldn't look at and go, man, that guy's like John Carlos Stanton. He's the most athletic dude you've ever seen in your life.
Right.
It wasn't like that. It was guys that didn't have the best body. It was the guys but just were baseball players.
Right.
Like just flat out baseball players. And, I think, what's it say in Moneyball, the island of misfit toys or whatever it says, right? It's like,
yep.
It's 100% that. But dude, those guys can play.
I got to ask you though, did you ever get to meet him though, the infamous Billy Bean?
Yeah, I did. Very briefly. I was in the big leagues for a week. Yeah, probably wasn't getting the red carpet rolled out for me, right?
No. Nope. So I want to say then, out of your whole career, then, what would you say was the key moment that you was like your number one big time welcome to the big league moment? What would you say was that moment in your career?
I think debut obviously is like, wow, I'm Jesus, big leagues. The second game was like, I gave a bond to Mike Piazza and I was like, shoot, welcome to big leagues. On the successful side, I pitched against the Red Sox at home one time. And I want to say I pitched just a couple of innings and I punched out 5, like 2 and change, and punched out 5 and punched out Ortiz twice, back-to-back days, actually, I think it was. And it was like, hang on, I might be long. Like I might be able to do this, because that first couple of years, like, man, I'd go out there and I'd battle through innings, like sometimes where it was like, man, I am giving it everything I've got, and sometimes I'm great, sometimes I'm not great, sometimes they're on me, sometimes they're not. So it was very up and down. But that 2010 year, I was dealing in AAA. I want to say I had a sub-1 ERA, made the All-Star team, got called up. And I think I really didn't give up too many runs in that 2010 year.
Yeah.
And that was when I first realized, after I'd got caught up after the All-Star break, and I had success for the first time. And I was like, man, I can do this. Like, this is like, I belong now. I know how to get guys out. I have the weapons to get guys out. That I can stay here now. And obviously injuries didn't let me do that, but
Right. Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah, and it's part of the game, right? It's like, there's very rarely do you ride off into the sunset saying, I played 20 years and I get to call when I get to take my jersey off.
Yeah.
Right. And I talk to kids about that now, like my college kids. Is like, hey man, you play as long as you can, because the day that you don't get to put on a uniform anymore sucks. And you may not know, like, just like I didn't know when the last time I pitched in the big leagues was.
Right.
You never know when your last day is, right? So,
which that led me to my next question. Obviously, you coach, like you said. What made you decide to get into coaching?
I love baseball, man. Like, I can't see my life without it. Just love it. Live, breathe, think about it all the time. If I was back home in Australia, my wife's from Arkansas. She's from Hot Springs here, which is kind of a cool town in itself. And the fact that Hot Springs, Arkansas is actually the birthplace of spring training. So before we were in Arizona, before we were in Florida, before, all that, a guy that owned the Chicago club at the time brought his players down here to get in shape before the season. And an amazing history in this town. It's crazy. I think 75% of the guys in the Hall of Fame have played here. So, but I would be at home. I'd be doing stuff with the strength kids. So, how do I give back? I was fortunate enough to play a long time. Even though it was cut short, I got to play a long time.
Yeah.
How do you give back that knowledge? The next generation, right? I had plenty of guys that put their heart and soul and effort into me, and how do you pay that back? Baseball's bigger than all of us. We're just custodians of it when we can kind of do it, right?
Yeah.
You never want to tarnish the game. You always want to leave it better than you found it.
Yeah.
Okay. So now the great part is, about 3 years ago, we started a college program here in town. And it's been great. We're in a really competitive conference and competitive National League Conference. The team that won our region and ended up finishing runner up in the national championship game. So, and they actually knocked us out last year. But within 3 years, we've really built a good thing. And out of 10 teams in our region, we finished fourth in our first real year through it. So, and knocked out one game before going to the championship game in our region. So it was like, how do you give the baseball knowledge back to the next generation and leave it better than you found it? And that's really what I care about. And I have a baseball facility here in town and do a lot of youth stuff, but I'm fortunate enough to be the head coach of the top level of baseball you can do in this town.
Now, if a big league team ever called or a minor league team ever called coming for coaching, would you leave all that to go coaching for the majors to help those guys out, or do you just want to help the kids?
I would love to be back in affiliated baseball. And I say that to say this. I get to sleep in my own bed every night. I get to see my wife and kids every night.
Right.
When they become 18, and leave the house and don't want to see me anymore, or I can't force them to see me anymore, maybe, right?
Right.
Maybe that's when I'd potentially look to follow that dream, I suppose, right? But right now I get to cut my teeth on development, which is a big passion of mine. Like as a baseball player in professional baseball, yes, you have everything in the world that you could possibly want, but you are your own product and you have to develop your own product. So whether you seek out professionals, of the facility world or but you are your own product. If you don't make it, it's on you. And I think you have to be passionate about player development to get to the big league sometimes. It's because you can develop your own product, right? If you're going to the gym every day, you are going to set yourself up for success. If you're not, the world's going to pass you by a little bit,
Yeah, that's very true. And yeah, if I was in your case, I wouldn't want to do that either. So I got a couple more questions before I let you go because I know it's getting late over here.
Yeah.
But I got to ask you, growing up, what were your influences, shall I say, that got you into the game of baseball and loving it?
The crazy thing is my mom and dad signed me up for T-ball when I was 5.5 years old. And it was because a kid down the street was playing. And they didn't even realize that T-ball would become baseball. And I was just a kid that just loved it. Felt day one loved it.
Mm-hmm.
Never stopped playing. And I think that's why I'm so and I see it today with the younger kids. You see the kids that are just ate up with it.
Yeah, call them and find out.
It just touches a nerve in them, right? That it's all they can think about. They're walking down the street practicing their pitching. They're walking down the street packing the swing. They're shopping with mom and dad in Walmart, and you see that dude taking dry hacks in the aisle. You're like, that dude just thinks about baseball all the time.
Yeah,
it's one of those games that it can grab you and never let go.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's really what it is for me. Is it hadn't let go yet.
Did you have any watching a game? No. Did you have any influences besides your parents getting you into that?
I would say so. Craig Shipley played in the big leagues with the Padres, actually.
I remember that. Yep.
Yeah, he was one of the first Australians.
Highlights. I was too young, but I remember.
Yeah, he's Ship's a little bit older than you, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
But so Ship's brother was our shortstop for the ABL for the local Sydney team.
Hmm.
And Mark was a hell of a player, but an even greater dude. When I was 13 years old, he came and talked to our team and talked about just, his passion for the game. And he inspired me that day. Like, it was like, I liked baseball before, but listening to him talk, it was like, man, that dude's he's not now just my baseball hero. He's just my dude hero. Right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Like just the way he went about things, the way what he cared about, how he talked, how he was passionate about being a good person,
Yeah.
and he is by far one of my greatest influences. Even to this day, I wore number 19 in the Australian team because of Mark Shipley, and Craig wore 19 in the big leagues, I think, as well with the Padres. But he was, just one of those next level inspiration, and I had great coaches, like great coaches throughout. But as a kid, I guess I looked up to Frank Thomas. Everyone liked those really cool Reebok shoes he had, right? That was kind of
Yeah. There you go. Yep.
the big Hurt shoes, right?
Yep.
And I was probably a White Sox fan because of that at the time.
Yep.
Yeah, it's funny now, like, and I probably should go back to that story, and because I have these college kids on campus, and my young assistant's like, "Hey, man, they just want to see the drip," and I'm like, "What the hell are you talking about? What's the drip?"
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, I guess man, just give me a uniform, I'll just throw whatever. And he's like, "No, man, they care about this stuff."
Yeah.
I'm like, all right.
So my final question, because I know you got to get back to your game, but my final question is, let's talk about your two teams that you play for, the Athletics and the Angels. Now, what do they need to do? I know baseball season hasn't started,
Yeah.
but yeah, exactly. We're waiting on that. But what do you think has been their issue as of late, especially with the Angels, why they can't make the playoffs with all the good players they have, and why the Athletics can't seem to get over that hump of making it to, let's say ALDS or ALCS. They can get to the wild card, but they fail. What do they need? What do those teams need to do to be successful?
Do the A's have a true number one?
Honestly, no. I don't think so.
That's why the A's don't make it past that point.
Maybe Montas. I don't know. Maybe.
Hey, he's been pitching great. Like,
yeah.
And I'm not taking anything away from these guys. What made Houston? What made the Yankees? What made, like, I think the Yankees haven't won it for a minute, but it's probably what the Yankees have actually not got quite enough of just yet.
Yeah.
You need what did Washington have? They had three dudes, and the Dodgers, right?
Yeah.
The Dodgers had 12 of them, but
right.
But I think it's that true number one, and if you have two of them, you can win a 7-game series, because if they both win 2 games within that period of time, you win the World Series. So I think, and that's why Houston was so good, right? Go get Verlander, right? You just went and got true number one. That dude's insanely good. If you're down to the last game of the season and you had the ball and you gave the ball to Verlander and you go, I got a chance today.
Yeah.
And that's Scherzer, man. Like, you give Scherzer the ball, right? Those guys are just different. whether they're just ultimate competitors or whatever it is. I mean, stuff's insane, but that the Angels need 3 top of the line starters. 100%. With Shohei could be it, right? But does he pitch 220 innings a year? Probably not. Does he pitch 120, 140? Yeah. But also true aces don't grow on trees, right?
No, they don't. No,
And I
you're
think,
right.
I think that's really where it is right now. And hopefully the competitive balance is that where, why the Royals won when they did, they stockpiled first rounders.
Yeah, that's very true.
Their whole double-A team was first round draft picks.
Yeah.
And then they went to the big league. They went to the big leagues together. So you can get true number ones, and you can have 2 or 3 of them. You're gonna have a chance to win every day.
Perfect. Yeah, I couldn't say anything better. So I gotta get going. So I appreciate your time. I appreciate it. You're more than welcome to come on anytime you want. I got your contact info. So yeah, it was fun. If you can, when you have time, please share it. Please
Absolutely.
share it. I'd appreciate it. And yeah, I'll definitely stay in touch.
Thanks, Brian.
Throughout the season and see how well you're doing with coaching. I appreciate it. You have a good night, all right?
Hey, National Park Nighthawks, you got to watch out, man.
That's right. But I thank you. You have fun, all right? Get back and have fun coaching, okay?
Absolutely.
Win that title.
Gotta go.
Win that title. All right, no problem. Have a good night. Bye.